Hi, Michelle. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So if you're just joining us, please feel free to type your name, your district, and your role in your district in the chat, just to say hello. Good afternoon, Sophia. Thanks for joining us. I'm still seeing some people joining. Good afternoon, Tanya. Welcome. Tanya is also our VP of Outreach. Welcome, Katie. Welcome, Ching Ching. Welcome, Lise. Welcome, Suzanne. Julie. Thanks for joining us. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll keep an eye on the waiting room as guests continue to join us. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, and then I will turn it over to our presenter for today. Okay. Great. So I just want to welcome everyone to the third in a series of, three of sessions that we've offered on co-teaching. And I am Colette Ferrone-Goodwin, and I am the Director of Regions for New York State TESOL. And these are, this is the co-leaders of the Syracuse-Binghamton region. This is our leadership team here in this region. Okay. Two of which are joining us today for the professional learning experience. Just some quick information about New York State TESOL and all of the benefits that it offers. And if you're not a member, or if you know someone that's not a member, please, encourage them to join. There are so many opportunities for networking and learning, and I think it's only $20 to join. And also want to remind you about the 2022 conference, which is coming up November 3rd through 5th. And the first day is actually a virtual day, and the second 2 days are in-person days, and it will be at the Sonesta in White Plains. So if you haven't registered yet, please do so. I hope to see a lot of your faces in person. That would be awesome. Really quickly, just want to share with you our social media platforms. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And so I would like to introduce our presenters for today. The topic, or the title for this session, is Topic Brief number 4. And as I said, this is the third in the series. They have done 2 previous. And will be presented by Lise Benavides and Brittany Wylie. And they are both from North Syracuse School District, and are also part of the Binghamton-Syracuse New York State TESOL region. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and welcome Lise and Brittany to our session.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I will begin sharing my screen. Okay. And Lise, I don't know if you want to just say hi. She will be helping me monitor the chat today, answer any questions you have as we move through this professional development.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Brittany is going to take the lead today. My throat is not feeling very good, So she's gonna be super lovely and take the lead. But I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So if there are any questions or anything like that, just throw them in there for us and we'll make sure to address them. Thank you.
Perfect. And you can all see my screen well, right? Give me a thumbs up. The speaker's notes are not in front, right? Okay. So we love to start off our professional development with this quote here that Ls desperately need educators who believe in them, who recognize their assets, and who have the support and training they need to do their best by all of their students. So we just want to thank you for being here today to, further your understanding and have resources that you can bring to your co-teachers and your administrators. So these topic briefs are posted on the NYSED website, and I feel that they are a really strong way to bring information to your colleagues, to your co-teachers, to your administrators, so that you are well prepared to let them know what types of things they need to be doing in order to meet our students' needs. So specifically, this quote and this sentence from the website: school district administrators, coaches, teachers, leaders, and all teachers working with ELs will benefit from the recommendations outlined in these documents. So understanding them and being able to bring them to the table, it will be really helpful. So I have some links here that I'm going to drop in the chat for you. This is a Padlet. And we like to start off the professional development with this Padlet to kind of get some prior knowledge from you. I also popped in the note catcher. It'll prompt you to make a copy. So you can make a copy of that and you can place your notes on there as we move through. You'll be able to check your understanding of the lesson objectives at the end. And if we have some time at the end, you can try to make an action plan of how you can use these documents in order to further your collaboration. So here is the Padlet, and we are working on topic brief number 4. You can add by clicking here, add post to this section, and you will let us know what you already know about this topic. What would you like to learn from this topic brief? And to remind you, if you have forgotten what this one is about, this one is brief number 4. And it's the 7 models of co-teaching.
The link for the actual topic brief is now in the chat as well.
Thank you. So some things you could add are, what are some models you already use? Have you seen this topic brief before? What would you like to know more about? So I know about the different types of models and how to use them. Great. Completely new. I've co-taught, but it never felt effective. So interested in you and learning about different models and the strengths of each. Discuss strategy with administrators. Looking forward to hearing about these models. No idea that there were 7. So continue to add to this as we go through. If you have any other questions, we can try to go back in and add some comments to it. But it's just a good way of thinking about, what do we already know about this topic? Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, and if you can't post in the Padlet, no problem. Go ahead and throw that in the chat. Okay. So as we move through here, our content objectives, we are going to have some great discussion about the topic brief and the 7 models. We will digest the brief into talking points that you can bring to your administrators and co-teachers. And hopefully by the end, we'll have some time for you to work on your action plan or at least have some ideas moving forward. Here's our language objectives. Make sure you'll be able to describe the 7 models, as well as discuss with your co-teacher the best models that could work for your team. So, instructional delivery through co-teaching. This is an integrated service. So as we move through co-teaching, 2 teachers, same room, or you can have a duly certified teacher. They use the instructional cycle to deliver their teaching. You want to make sure that there's integration of grade level content into the curricula, language instruction while building their content area, and the options are: one teacher undertakes a leading role while the other one supports the instruction in various ways, as well as both teachers may take on similar roles and responsibilities. So there are 7 models that we'll go through. Number 1 is that 1 leads and 1 teaches on purpose. 2 teach the same content. 1 teaches, 1 assesses. 2 teach the same content with 2 groups. 1 pre-teaches, 1 teaches alternative information with 2 groups. And 1 teaches alternative information with 2 groups. So I also included this graphic over here. I thought it was a great way to show, we have strengths on both sides. We're bringing them together to this co-teaching relationship. So here's our model number 1, 1 group and 1 leads and 1 teaches on purpose. So in this one, 1 teacher leads the lesson while the other one supports the learning of the students in various ways. There is a lead teacher, they introduce information. You can see here, they're introducing the information in this graphic, and they can demonstrate a skill. That's what they're trying to get the students to do. So they have the model and then they use the new strategy. They're going to share the information together. So both teachers have an opportunity to lead the lessons, and the students will view each teacher as equals, which is very important. The supporting role, this teacher will circulate around to check the understanding and clarify directions, scaffold, request information, and stand by the lead teacher and then they can also provide immediate feedback during the guided practice. So advantage of this one are that teacher partners who select this model will be able to make the content of the lesson comprehensible for multilingual learners and ELs. They're going to be able to provide on-the-spot verbal and procedural scaffolds for the students, as well as consistently monitoring the students and how they're doing. And this will allow for adjustments to ensure greater student success. This is a very common model I feel like a lot of E&L teachers use with their co-teaching. Some challenges with this model: that it's a go-to when there's no time to plan. So that's why we're working as professionals to incorporate co-teaching planning time into our schedules. Not always possible, but when you're able to, it's amazing. This makes 1 teacher responsible for the planning and the lesson preparation. The other teacher might be, the helper or the TA in the room if they're not taking equal leadership or responsibility. So it's important that while 1 teacher assumes the leading role, the other teacher should be also providing support. Common uses: beginning of the lesson when the teacher wants to share new information or content via direct instruction. They can activate students' prior knowledge through short Q&A and demonstrate a reading strategy. Co-teaching teams, they can use it to, you kind of use it as a limit to model 5 to 10 minutes of the lesson plan. And then variations, one teacher leads for a short time and then switches. Again, it helps show that both teachers have responsibilities and are viewed as equals in the classroom. So I want you to take some time to reflect on your practice, drop in the chat or feel free to unmute. What is your experience with this particular teaching model? Have you used it? What do you find are the advantages or disadvantages?
Brittany, I can share a little. I feel like that's one of the models that I end up participating in the most often. And I kind of always get a little bit stuck on the disadvantage, which is I become the TA of the classroom because not a lot of teachers have the ability of letting go of their lesson per se. And also one of the factors that works against us is that we don't necessarily get the same co-planning time. So when you get into the classroom and you don't have that co-planning time and you haven't had that conversation in advance, it is also difficult for them to let you take the lead because you might not necessarily know what's happening just yet. So I think that has been my experience in the classroom. I usually stuck on the disadvantage, not necessarily the advantage part of it, unfortunately.
And it seems that a lot of people in the chat definitely agree with you, Lise. Michelle said something about feeling like a glorified TA, which we've probably almost all of us have felt that feeling. And then again, another disadvantage is you observed is one teacher being more dominant. So striking that balance is really challenging, but in this particular model is also very important. Did you have something to share, Suzanne?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that so much of this depends on the relationship between the two teachers. And if it's a model that is, if it's at the secondary, I've been at the high school doing this, if it's a model where the class meets every day with the two teachers, some schools, because it's such money issue, are doing alternate days. And that is really disruptive to the students and to the teaching styles because it just, you don't know where one ends and one begins and where you left off. So it's really important, the planning time and the notion that the students view you both as equal teachers, and the whole notion of the TA or Vanna White in the back, holding up signs or whispering in Espanol or cualquier idioma into the students' ears is just not, that's not co-teaching.
Right. Yes. And I mean, I've definitely experienced the same thing, Suzanne. Thank you for sharing. It can be difficult. Also, we have block scheduling, and due to the minutes, I only go in for 40 minutes sometimes. So I think that showing your administrators that there are quite a lot of disadvantages of this. It can be used sometimes, but there definitely are disadvantages that you have to work through and be given time to work with your teacher to get through. Thank you. All right, next model. Since we have 7, I should definitely chug through them. Model 2, one group to teach the same content. So both of these teachers are leading the lesson together. They might take on different roles and responsibilities, and they freely pass the chalk is the phrase that they're using here, which is that they are going from one to the other to provide students with rich, valuable information and opportunities, and using their strengths really to their advantages. So one teacher might be sharing new information while the other one's clarifying content, maybe through note-taking or illustrations or multimedia, and one might suggest how to problem solve, identify how to use a particular comprehension strategy, or demonstrate a different way to solve the same problem. So advantages of this one. So students definitely can benefit from the more detailed information, extensive demonstration, and varied materials with these different co-teachers working together. And with this team approach, two teachers can model a dialogue. So it better helps students explore statements and questions. This model allows each teacher to assume different responsibilities. So one might focus on the content while the other one concentrates on the academic language or literacy practices that will need to be addressed during the lesson. Challenges. So students who are frequently grouped together for pre-teaching might feel a little stigmatized that they, are subpar learners. It's the same of when you're tracking, you hear the teachers always like, this is the red group. So they might think, okay, red is bad, red is stop sign. And, the students might feel like they're not equal to their peers. So it's important to group students by their levels, though, in their language proficiency. That way the content can be modified to what it needs to be. So in order to make it successful, unfortunately, they might feel stigmatized at times. And by and large, flexible groupings can make this model effective. In addition, consider the time set aside for pre-teaching. It does affect students' access to rigorous curricula. So I know that a lot of teachers sometimes fight back on the building background knowledge or, activating prior knowledge because they feel it adds more time and their pacing is thrown off. So common uses, you can use this model for pre-teaching vocabulary, building background knowledge. As I said, it's really critical to understanding new material that our Ls may have not had any experience with. So students can be supported by mapping out and pre-teaching information using graphic organizers to reference during the main lesson. And it's important that students are grouped for pre-teaching according to their performance. And specifically their performance in class and not necessarily their language proficiency. That's because, depending on the content area, their language proficiency might vary. So here we are reflecting again. You can type something in the chat. Let me know what's your experience with this model. And have you experienced something similar? I've done this model as well, but it does take some time to build respect and mutual understanding. That way the teacher doesn't feel like you're interrupting them because you are bantering and flowing into each other. It definitely depends on personalities for this one for me. All right, I'll continue to move forward. Let me know if you want to throw something in the chat. I will keep it open and look for you. Model 3, one teaches and one assesses. So with this co-teaching approach, one teacher will lead the lesson while the other one circulates the room for the purpose of assessing students. Assessment might take place over a brief amount of time in the class period, or it might extend far into the lesson. The teacher in charge of the assessment often takes notes on the linguistic behaviors of these students or uses a checklist or rubric to evaluate student performance. At times, the observing teacher might also gather data, but they're going to be leading the lesson while the other teacher is gathering all the data. So some advantages is that there's no way to collect authentic assessment data rather than one teacher to carefully observe students completing a task and note taking. So this type of assessment is usually difficult to accomplish with only one teacher in the room. So having the co-teacher is very helpful. So data gathering can assist the development of future lessons and hone in on the different language practices and literacy skills that the students have. In addition, the teacher observing the lesson might offer feedback. So it kind of can start to feed into the other model we were just talking about as well. I do feel that these models work together sometimes, and you'll see later it'll say, one model is not incorrect, but using one model all the time is not best practice. So some challenges is that it might appear that one teacher is responsible for planning the entire lesson. It's important for both teachers to collaborate on the lesson procedures. Although one's leading and mostly responsible, it is possible that the observing teacher to work with students during the lesson. So this model might be effective it might not be effective if it's applied too frequently.
Brittany, we have some comments in the chat.
Yes, can you read them, Lise?
Yes, from Suzanne. She says, I am curious if I may ask, how do your district places students into COTAT classes? Are they all Ls or former Ls, or some are Ls at all, or some are not Ls at all? Sorry. This really seems to vary because the models are called COTAT, but their class makes up very widely in a student's backgrounds. Thanks. So I think I can answer this one, and then Brittany jump in with us. Right now, depending on their level, they have our Ls groups, at least in my school. They try to separate them so that we have a smaller groups of Ls in each of our classes, and then former Ls, right now they are able to go into other classes. So we don't really need to go into their classes at all, unless we just keep checking on them through their teacher and offer support that way. It is not perfect, but I feel like it is the best that we can do right now, especially because the staffing can be challenging at times. So I don't know, Brittany, what would you like to add to that?
I agree with everything you said. And then it depends on the demographics of the school and funding, of course. So how many students have to be within one class just depends on, when I worked in the city, I had a lot more opportunities for, for having a class that was, led by a duly identified teacher. So it would be pretty much all Ls, or, if there's not enough teachers to cover all the grade levels, there's going to be all the Ls in one class. The Nice TESOL Zoom account left a really great comment I want to read. Model 2 is well-intentioned, but it may look differently in the secondary level since most subject contents are specialized. I'm afraid that unless the curriculum is redesigned or reimagined to welcome student community input and allows ENL teachers facilitate knowledge construction and sharing, this model might not be as empowering as it seems for ENL teachers. Yes, so I am very lucky. I'm duly certified. I am certified in ELA and ENL. So for me, when I'm pushing into the ELA class, I do feel empowered because I have that content knowledge. But if you are not, I could definitely agree, and it might be difficult. And then Michelle said that, asked how is the co-teacher observed if he or she is the assessor? How would that work for assessor co-teacher in terms of her teaching position? That's a great question. And that's, I think, a constant struggle and battle that ENL teachers have, is that the way our position is, we function much differently than a traditional classroom teacher because of these different co-teaching models that we need to step into the roles of throughout the class in order to best service our students. Does anyone else have to speak to that or have had experience with that particular information?
I also think that all of these models, we're not supposed to be stuck on one model in particular. We're supposed to, just use them as it best benefit that lesson in particular. So I think the model 3 is more useful if you're trying to assess the need of the classroom at that particular lesson at that particular point in the curriculum. I think that if you're thinking about observation, then a model 1 or other of the 7 that we're going to be talking about might be more appropriate, because this one definitely, you as the co-teacher that is just taking notes is not going to be able to show much teaching.
I agree, Lisa. And as I'm thinking about our particular NYSED model that we follow for observations, there is an assessment piece on there. So it definitely is good to kind of, you know, use this model for a little bit, but then in order to show that you are doing all of the other things for your observation, you would not stick into it for the whole time. All right, common uses. So this model is typically used to capture students' progress that can't be determined by other means. So it really will be helpful for those newcomer students. This model can quickly assess students' prior learning and in turn use the assessment data to group students for instruction. So you would kind of use this model and then you would shift into a different model. So time, we already kind of reflected. So unless you have something else you want to throw in the chat quickly, I'm going to keep moving forward. Suzanne says also on observations, it is helpful for co-teachers to debrief after using one model or another. Communication is key. You got it, Suzanne. It really is. Communication is key for sure. Okay, model 4, this is with 2 groups. So 2 teach the same content. So what is this? This approach is where the class is divided into 2 groups that are fairly equal in size. The purpose of the division is to decrease the student-teacher ratio, therefore create instructional groups that have more contact time with the teachers. So this will increase discussion, language, literacy practice, and have more guidance. The groups are divided, you know, heterogeneous or homogeneous according to the ability in the content area or the language proficiency, basically what just works for your group at that time. So co-teaching partners need to teach the same content to the group, but they might use different resources, text materials, so they're differentiating according to the students' needs. This way, all the students will benefit from being instructed by both teachers and have the opportunity to use varied and unique materials. So advantages of this is that it decreases the student-teacher ratio and allows for more personal attention to address individual student needs. This model can create an environment where interaction is more frequent and the students may feel at ease to communicate and take risks, which we know is key for them to acquire that language. Student groups can be devised to meet various learning preferences as well as enhance the teacher's ability to differentiate instruction. Disadvantages, so adequate planning time and good class management are essential to make this run smoothly. There needs to be a willingness on the part of both teachers to share their resources and materials, as well as an established trust, so that each teacher will be able to execute the content instruction and language development aspects of the lesson. So in addition, the level of sound might be louder and some teachers are uncomfortable with that. You know, there's a difference between a chaotic classroom and a loud learning classroom. And that can be hard for some teachers who are not used to that. So I don't know, though these disadvantages are here, they seem like really great things to overcome. So model 4 can be combined with student jigsaw activities if different materials are used, I assume. Yeah. Yes. So, okay. Yes. So I see what you're saying here. So using this model to then go into maybe model number 1, I think that's a great idea. So common uses are used to differentiate instruction, for students in order to meet their unique needs. One group might work with one of the teachers at the interactive whiteboard to review steps in a process or be guided step by step and have extra practice time to solve similar problems. Meanwhile, the other group of students is working on the same concepts with the other teacher who is using hands-on materials or manipulatives to support student learning. Most often, the students swap places and have the opportunity to be with each teacher and use different resources and materials throughout the lesson that might be used differently, and the amount of support given or the pace of instruction. Juliet, a question, will the students be able to get adjusted to the different teacher styles? And I mean, that's part of it. Maybe the student responds more to one teacher style than the other. So, and they're supposed to be teaching the same content. So if they're not really, doing great with the one teacher style, they should be still getting the content from the other teacher, is the hope. So here's some time to reflect. Julie started it. If you have any other reflections you want to put in the chat or unmute yourself, go for it.
I can speak. This one took me a very long time to get to in my district, so I want to be very clear about that. And I work with K through third grade this year, and I used to be K6. So my district did have to hire so that I did have time in my day to partake in this. So that is a big point. And I'm only doing it in the kindergarten room I work in the first grade room I work in. And we do centers during math and skills. So 2 of us teach the lesson simultaneously. And yes, our teaching styles are a little different. And normally if a kid is just not like fully getting it with me, or their behavior is not leaning towards me and they're leaning more towards my co-teacher, we just do a quick switch. It's not like nothing is set in stone, but I also work with people who are flexible like me. We know where every manipulative is in everyone's room. So if this manipulative isn't working for me in math, I go grab a different one. But we've also gotten to work together for the last 4 years. So I've had the same co-teachers for 4 years. So that's made this very easy for us, even if we don't have a mutual planning in our day, which we do not. We don't even have a mutual lunch in our day. So we plan maybe like once a month, just a big long thing. And I have old like books that I know where we keep our pacing guides at. So it's not perfect, but I have found in all of the rooms I've worked in that this works best for the level that my kids are at, because, and then I'm also viewed as a teacher in a room, not just a like wallflower in the back. And because I've had kids who halfway through the year, I'll finally go, who are you? So this allows me to be a part of the room. Every kid gets to work with me. And then honestly, it's made it easier moving because I move grade levels with a lot of the same group. So when I get them in second grade, they're like, oh, you're back in here. Are we going to do centers? And then they say it and their teachers are like, oh, are you willing to do centers? And then other times they're like, we are not a center room. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So that's my little soapbox about this one. I really like it. I just wish I could learn to make everyone like it the way that me and my other 2 co-teachers do, but I'll get there one day.
Thank you so much, Katie. And you're so right. I agree I've had the same experience. When you're working with the same teacher over time, it really helps being able to develop those relationships. So that's why when sometimes a principal might suggest, we're going to rotate who has the E&L kids every year. That's not, always the best thing. If a teacher really likes working with the E&L students and they feel like it's working and you're developing a relationship, my personal stance is keep that going, because you're going to get to greater and better models. Oops, sorry.
You know what? I want to pick up on that, Brittany, because that's so important. What Katie said, I put in the chat, because that's something to celebrate 4 years together, because the first year is really a learning year and the kids are the ones who benefit. So it raises your status because you are their teacher. And sometimes you'll find yourself working with kids who are not even remotely ELL, but they love you for whatever it is that you're doing and singing and dancing in K1 too. So the point is, maybe NYSED, NYSED could consider a position paper to put some pressure on administrators at the building level to keep a team like Katie and her coworkers together for the benefit of the kids. Because I see this again and again when I go in and I mentor, I don't do it anymore. They say, well, everyone needs to learn. They're all our kids. Yes, we know that. But then you're breaking up a marriage that's working. Like, why? If it benefits the kids, and especially at the younger level where you're moving up with them. It's so important for our kids to have that consistency of an adult they know and they trust. It's just a thought for New York State to start looking at not breaking up teams that are working well. Maybe have a rubric for it and say what's working well. It's consistent. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. You hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, I definitely agree. And my hope is that these briefs will be a tool that you can bring to your administrators. And as much as we do advocate, it's really nice to have something from NYSED to show them that these are advantages of this model. All right, model 5, we have a few more to get through. So what this one is, so this one often has L's and MLs benefit from this group instruction because it focuses on the building of background. So this one is one pre-teaches and one teaches alternative information. So with these purposes in mind of building background, front loading, vocabulary, previewing essential lessons, co-teaching partners can decide which students should be selected for pre-teaching based on their levels of preparedness. And one teacher will work with these selected students to build background knowledge. So advantages, careful attention to the needs of individual students can be provided. Lessons devised this way can help build academic and basic vocabulary skills while enhancing the vocabulary of other students. And students who need additional support can develop their self-confidence and increase their success because they have that preloaded information. Challenges, students who are frequently grouped together for pre-teaching might feel stigmatized, again, that we, bringing this back up. And it's important not to only group students by their levels of language proficiency, and, flexible groupings will really make this more effective. So the common use to pre-teach vocabulary, build background knowledge, and students will be supported throughout so that they have the information in order to be successful in the lesson. I really feel that this one is one that can be used very briefly throughout the lessons, throughout units, so that students have information going into the main lessons. Any comments about that one? I don't think it's one that is used, you wouldn't use that for an entire class period every single day. Model 6, 2 groups, one reteaches and one teaches alternative information. So this one is kind of the same as model 5. The students are divided into 2 groups based on their knowledge and skills. Yet the purpose for one of the groups is to review and practice previous taught content. So the flip side of this all. This approach may be planned for the beginning of a lesson or used at any time during the lesson when monitoring students. So that when need for additional support or immediate intervention arises, you can use it. Yes, Katie, I do like using this for the secondary level because that's so content heavy. Sorry, I'm still at school.
I can talk while you're waiting for your announcements because I get those too. I have been having, because I'm working with this model with our secondary schools, and a lot of teachers have said, well, we don't have time for that. There's not enough time. Kids don't need that. And it would only be your kids. And we're working on people not saying your kids because it very much so upsets me. It's a model that works for any kid who is missing any form of background knowledge. And I've expressed that it doesn't have to happen every day, but you would see growth if you gave a kid a quick background knowledge of these vocabulary words, especially in a science class and a history class. We sometimes forget we teach Americanized history and kids are coming from different backgrounds of history they're taught. So I've been working through this. I just wish I had I'm going to use this information to help tell people that it is okay. And it is okay not to use it every day. It could just be a quick once a week, and you have another person in your room who can help you do it. It's not a job you have to take on yourself. So I'm working through that.
Good luck, Katie. I think one way that having been at the high school, and they don't teach students, they teach content. Okay, that's the difference. So that's the way they think about it. But if you don't realize that, you've got to make a connection. But once or twice a week, it's really interesting to ask the students who have the background knowledge to reflect on what it is that helped them learn something. So you're talking about a Socratic method, and it brings it up higher so that those teachers are resistant because they don't have time, all of a sudden realize, well, maybe I can get the kids themselves to teach and think about what other connections did they make, which sort of activates that prior knowledge and helps. And then that's your way to teach it, sort of coming from the side, and it comes from the kids. It's very tricky with secondary teachers or even upper grades once you get past third grade.
Thank you so much for sharing. This is a beautifully rich conversation and so very true in my everyday life even. And it's a reason why I started taking administration classes, because I really want to help administrators understand the importance of this at the upper grade levels for all students. It's not just for our students, it's for all students. So advantages of this one are the models of this model parallel those of the previous ones. So individual students can be better supported, just like we've been saying, through scaffolded material and differentiated instruction. These small group lessons can hone in specific aspects of this topic and content, and it allows for greater flexibility so that, you know, only select amount of students need that reteaching, so they'll get it. The thing is teachers could be doing other extension activities with students who do get it already. You know, they don't realize that if you're reteaching a small group, your whole life doesn't stop. Like, there are different things that you could be doing to dive into the content for those other students. So the challenge is that depending on the individual needs of students and the type of interventions necessary, more than 2 groups might be required to address the learning issues. It might be difficult to parallel review time with enrichment activities for some students. They might require different time frames to complete this. Again, caution must be exercised so that certain students are not labeled as low performing. Common uses: use this to offer immediate support and intervention. And, you know, it is a short-term thing. Co-teachers frequently anticipate the need for individualized instruction or interventions, and this can be informed by formative assessment. And so, you know, this model is really great for making sure that students have what they need before moving on to the next lesson. So we had some great reflection in the middle, so I'm going to keep going. So about 12 minutes. So model 7, multiple groups to monitor and teach. So the various arrangements of students and the array of flexible groupings in this model provides and allows teachers the ability to differentiate the content, process, and product of instruction. So with this approach, both teachers can either circulate around the room to oversee the student learning support, clarify information, review instructions, explain critical concepts, assess student learning, and so on. So with these smaller groups, they're doing mini lessons, and the teacher can help with independent learning. Luckily, that's the final call. So it will individualize the student's learning experience. So in the advantages of this model, there are high levels of student engagement due to the variety of activities, the ability to tier lessons according to students' levels of language expertise, and it promotes the use of all 4 language domains. As I've gone to many PDs at BOCES, we want to swirl together. We want to use all of the domains. And they have an increased opportunity to interact with each other, which is something I'm personally pushing daily for my students. Challenges: some students may be overwhelmed or confused by what needs to be completed in a certain time frame, or moving to these different stations. Younger students in particular might get distracted if they're not being directly monitored. If homogeneous groupings used exclusively, again, it might lead to segregation or labeling of some students. I've used this model at both ninth grade and kindergarten. And if it is modeled, you are reinforcing the rules and the different ways that things need to be completed. It can be extremely successful with K through 12. So common uses, you're going to be using learning stations or learning centers with guided reading and writing. Some common applications of this model. Other examples and frequent uses might be collaborative practices amongst students to use manipulatives to problem solve in math, conduct experiments in science, and examining and commenting on short pieces of text in the English language arts. So this model, can be really great for using manipulatives and extending the learning. And that's why it's it says here it's a frequent go-to model for co-teachers. I wish it was. In my personal experience, I don't feel it is, but once teachers become comfortable enough to try this, it really is effective. So would anyone like to comment on this one? So when you're selecting your models for instruction, you need to strategically select one or two models. And it depends on your lesson objectives, your learning tasks, your individual student needs, expertise of each teacher, your desired outcomes from the students. And again, no single model of co-teaching instruction should be used exclusively. They should be used throughout the unit and according to all of these things that it depends on the choice. So some additional examples that were stated in the topic brief are that these 7 models should only serve as a starting point for configuring classes or co-taught instruction. There are multiple ways to combine or modify the teaching models presented in the document to meet L's needs. For example, one variation that appears popular is the 2-teach 2-support model, in which both teachers begin by teaching the same content to one group of students, and then both teachers circulate the class to guide the students in practice and application concepts. The co-teaching teams need to experiment with the various ways to group students and to use the classroom space to enhance their learning. So that's all the models, and I was going to leave you with a couple suggestions. So we have Co-Teaching for English Learners by David Hongsfeld. We know them very well as language teachers. This is a really great book that I've shared with my co-teachers. Some suggestions for creating a co-teacher toolkit. I love this graphic. So, have a binder divided into multiple subjects and content areas. Think about the strategies that your students would use the most, or maybe some of the models that you feel like you'll move the most, and have a mini chart in your binder. And take your toolkit to all the classes with you, or I've made copies and I just leave them in the classroom. And I love Valentina Gonzalez. She makes these beautiful, amazing graphics, and this was just a really great one. Co-teaching and the components of literacy. So she's showing here all the different ways that these models can be used in order to bring literacy to L's and other students. So hopefully we have reached all of our content objectives. We had some really great discussion. I hope you used your note taker sheet to write down some talking points you can use with your administrators and co-teachers. And we will get into allowing you to do the action plan the last 5 minutes-ish. So hopefully you're able to describe the co-teaching models, at least, you know, have the list with you so you can use that to describe and try to discuss with your co-teacher the best models that can work for your team. So thank you very much for coming and attending and having this wonderfully rich discussion. If you want to take the next 5 minutes to ask us questions, to talk about more things, to begin your action plan, to think about who you're going to talk to, who needs to be involved in that conversation, when you're going to do it, setting concrete goals for yourself and when you're going to accomplish them will really help you make some moves this year in order to meet the needs of your owls.
Thank you, Brittany. That was great, great resources that you shared. And oh, somebody's saying thank you.
I think it's Lisa. She might be breaking up a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yes. Oh, yes, the feedback form.
So it looks like just to make sure that everybody's knows what's going on. Brittany had just placed a link for the evaluation form into the chat, and they're asking that you please complete that. So
Yes. Thank you. And yeah, it'll help inform us for if we give this again. Thank you very much.
thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.